I'm Valerie Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design and delighted to welcome you today. We will be doing open captioning throughout. We will also be saving this presentation so that you will be able to see a fully accessible version in a few days on our website, and we'll let people know about that opportunity. We will be doing Q&A at the end, and we trust we'll have a very active Q&A. It's something that we really treasure. So over the course of Jesse's presentation, you should feel free when you are inspired to start putting questions into the Q&A, and we will have plenty of questions, plenty of time for questions at the end. I know many of you may be joining us from the United States who are interested in credits for the AIA. We will put the link in the chat late in the presentation. I am very pleased that we are hosting a colleague, an emerging leader in the inclusive design world, Jesse Klimitz, who is Principal North America Human Space. And Jesse, I believe, represents in the story he will share with you today, something that I believe is an emerging pattern. Still very early on in that emergence, but it is an emerging pattern of global design firms building capacity in-house to ensure that they are at cutting edge competence in inclusive design. And I am so happy that this is a North America story. We will be sharing other stories of similar tales of big firms finding their way to inclusive design excellence in the next 6 months. But Jesse is really our first with this story. So Jesse, I will step away and the floor is all yours. Jesse Klimitz.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for the kind introduction. I am just going to share my screen. Give me one moment. And you should be able to now see the cover slide of today's presentation, From Theory to Practice and Building a Global Inclusive Design Practice. So thank you again, Valerie, for having me here today, and to the Institute for Human-Centered Design for the opportunity to present about inclusive design. So my name is Jesse Klimitz, and my pronouns are he, him, his. I am a principal in North America at BDP and lead our inclusive design practice, Human Space, globally. I am a trained Canadian architect and inclusive design strategist. I am a Caucasian person with short brown hair and wearing a light blue dress shirt. I am speaking today from my home office in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I'm really excited to share this topic today with everyone and hope that we will have an engaging conversation. So I'm first going to start with a little bit of background about who we are. So on the slide is a global map. And this map shows BDP, a global multidisciplinary design firm that was founded in Preston, England in 1961, and has since grown into a global organization with 19 studios worldwide. And on the next slide is a list of services, sectors, and expertise at BDP. Firstly, in the key services, the firm offers globally architecture, design, landscape, urbanism, and engineering services, and works across a variety of sectors, including culture and leisure, education, healthcare, housing, retail, sports, transit, and workplace. And also has a deep expertise in acoustics, adaptive reuse, feasibility, inclusive design, which is what we're going to speak about today, lighting, sustainability, and feasibility. And On the next slide here is our logo for the human space practice, which is the inclusive design practice of BDP. And I'll get a little bit into the story about my own path to date in this industry, and as well more about human space. So human space is the inclusive design practice of BDP and is a global collaborative of experts that are dedicated to this cause. And Human Space has successfully collaborated with others to deliver more than 300 projects over the past decade, spanning across sectors and markets. And on the slide, I am showing a grid of a variety of projects that we've worked on through the Human Space practice. And the values that drive our practice are inherently human-centered. So these values include inclusivity. So this is to consider people first and incorporate broadest perspectives to arrive at better solutions. Resilience by future-proofing our built environment to promote health and well-being, and connectivity to allow for people to foster meaningful connections with one another. And on the slide, I am showing symbols that demonstrate these values of inclusivity, resilience, and connectivity. And so our global team, shown on this following slide, includes specialists in accessibility, in equity, in social value, well-being, resilience, graphics and wayfinding, as well as on-site accessibility and universal inclusive design auditors and assessors. And on the following slide, we work with a variety of client groups, and their logos are shown on the slide. So we work through Human Space. We work with a variety of architecture and design firms. We work with universities and colleges, real estate organizations that have a corporate mandate for corporate social value, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion mandates and ESG mandates. So many of our emerging clients are in the real estate organization sectors, engineering and construction firms, and public and government being some of the largest clients that and projects that we've had to date. And so our services in the global marketplace include a focus on inclusion, well-being, and equity in the built environment. And in all of our work, we consider the baseline requirements, but of course, look towards better practice opportunities. And so these services include inclusive design, which is mostly what I will be talking about today in some of our case studies. Audits and feasibility work, where we look at existing portfolios of real estate, from campuses to individual buildings and interior spaces. Certification and benchmarking services. So this relates to WELL, FitWell, LEED health and the WELL health and safety rating, the RELY standard. So several certification and benchmarking services. Design consulting. So this is where we work with other firms and teams in a capacity of our areas of expertise. Engagement and facilitation with clients and in the community, guidelines and standards, research, training, and wayfinding services. And so I'll get now into a little bit more about our approach within the human space practice. So on the slide, we're illustrating our focus through a diagram. And at the top of our diagram, our focus continues to be largely on the inclusion of people with disabilities within the built environment. So this includes cognition and less visible disabilities, hearing, mobility, strength and dexterity, vision, and stature. And in the below section on the slide, we also take a wider lens to embrace the intersectional aspects of individuality, such as race, place of origin, creed, indigeneity, age, sexual orientation, pregnancy, gender expression, social mobility, family status, citizenship, and other facets. And this is an evolving practice, an area for us. And it's really together, it's looking at how these areas intersect and how we can create environments that that are welcoming and inclusive of the greatest extent of all people within the built environment. And one of our keys to our process is user engagement and user involvement. And so this is engaging with different interested parties and individuals and having multidisciplinary collaborations in our work. This allows us to understand different perspectives through different stages of the design process and lived experiences to come together and identify where there might be mismatches through the design process. And through that process, we need to better understand the kinds of exclusion that someone other than ourselves might encounter and question why we create these barriers that are often overlooked in the first place. And on the slide is an image of individuals collaborating through one of our workshops and coming through with some different ideas and solutions to a challenge. So I'm going to now move on to a bit about my career journey and how I kind of got here, and where what my journey has been to date. So just to start, I spent 7.5 years at the University of Toronto, and I worked and I focused on two degrees, a Bachelor's of Architecture and a Master's of Architecture degree, and completed my Master's of Architecture at the John H. Daniels faculty in 2009. And on the slide is a picture of me shown jumping in midair, being thrilled and done my 7.5 years of education at my final thesis review, and knowing that this was kind of an end to my schooling and moving into the next chapter in the professional world. And at that time, and showing on the next slide, my master's thesis project, which had focused on the concept of leveraging accessible mixed-use transit hubs as an effective solution for older adults to successfully age in place within the city of Toronto. And these hubs were envisioned to provide all the necessary healthcare, food, service, recreational, and amenity needs to an intergenerational society, which Toronto very much is. And learning about the accessibility issues in our mass transit system in Toronto and the limited opportunities for older adults to access essential services across the city, at this time, it really fostered my interest in accessibility and universal design. And it became evident to me through more research that there was a real gap and need in our industry and in society to address issues of accessibility, equity, and inclusion in the built environment. And so on the slide are just some images of my work as a student. And upon graduating, I worked at an architecture practice in Toronto for several years through my master's degree and upon graduation. And my work largely focused on high-rise housing projects. And so on the slide are two examples of private condominiums for local developers in three-dimensional views. So while it was rewarding at the time to learn about planning and approval processes, submitting for building permits, achieving target housing densities and saleable areas, or designing facades or utilizing BIM software, something really felt missing for me at that time when I was working in my early years. And so at that time, I began to work part-time in a research lead capacity at OCAD University in Toronto. And this was a collaboration between OCAD University and the Toronto Community Housing Corporation, alongside community residents to look at inclusive wayfinding solutions within the social housing context. And so on the slide is a cover of the research report and picture of the research team at the time and the community members that were involved in the work. And doing that type of work within the community felt very meaningful to me. And my passion for accessibility and inclusion in the built environment became even stronger at that time. And so in 2011, nearing just now it's over 14 years ago, I learned about a Toronto-based architecture firm. And this architecture firm was named Quadrangle. And that Quadrangle was beginning a new consulting practice called Accessibility Advantage. And that year, I had the opportunity to join the firm and to begin working closely with a pioneer of accessible design in Ontario named Susan Ruptash. And together, we worked for 8 years on building a consulting practice named Accessibility Advantage, which was a joint venture with a non-for-profit organization in Canada named March of Dimes Canada, which was a direct response in the marketplace to Ontario, Canada's province of Ontario's first ever legislation and standards on accessibility in the province. And this was the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And the rest was history at that point, coming to the firm and aligning on my interests and my passions and my hope to contribute in a meaningful way to the profession of architecture. And so on the slide is an image of Susan and an image of myself and the two logos for Accessibility Advantage and the AODA with the Ontario logo and symbol. So from that point forward, for over 8 years, I had the opportunity to work on many fascinating architecture and design projects that are shown on the slide, including work in children's healthcare, sports, commercial projects, and housing projects. And much of our work was in-house and in collaboration as well with many other architecture and design practices throughout the city. While our focus was on consulting around issues related to the AODA at the time, it was also an opportunity for us to move beyond baseline requirements as the local market began to gain more appreciation and more momentum in understanding the issues around disability and equity in the built environment. And during that time, I had a great opportunity to work with the government of Ontario on the 2015 Para-Pan Am Games, Athletes Village, and 4 venues through the planning, design, and compliance work. And on the slide is an image of cyclists at the Mattamy Cycling Centre, now constructed in Milton, Ontario. And so the challenge here was to establish, at the time, design criteria for the games that would integrate the needs of para-athletes and considering the use of various sport chairs within all public spaces and also to future-proof the facilities for legacy community use. And so we created a set of universal design requirements at the time by comparing applicable codes, standards, and legislations and best practice research. And we collaborated with stakeholders, the disability community, and parasport athletes. We provided consulting support and review through design and construction of these venues. And so here on the slide is an image of the Mattamy Cycling Centre, which integrated accessible design criteria for the main building entry of the velodrome shown in the view on the slide. And we worked with user groups and athletes to design criteria for clear views to different fields of play, designing of universal change rooms, accessible amenity spaces, and support spaces. And we supported with working alongside the different architecture firms. We worked from concept through to construction at both a micro scale and a macro scale. And so here on the slide are images of the field house, the viewing deck in the aquatic center, and entry views to the universal change rooms at the Pan Am Aquatic Center. So based on the success of Accessibility Advantage for over 8 years and working together with March of Dimes, we built a quite a big base of clients and experience. And at that time, it was opportune for us to move forward with establishing Human Space, which was an emerging inclusive design practice in the city of Toronto. And the vision for Human Space was and is still to date to elevate the human experience through built environments that embody inclusivity, resilience, and connectivity, and with its purpose to advise placemakers with thoughtful and innovative design solutions that promote equity and well-being. And the image on the slide is an example of one of our projects, which is the Milton Velodrome, as well as our purpose statement. So shortly after the creation of Human Space, the practice joined together with BDP, which, as I had mentioned earlier, is a global multidisciplinary design, architecture, and engineering firm headquartered in the UK. And this became an opportunity of bringing the strength and roots of Toronto's inclusive design practice to a global firm focused on people-first environments. What an exciting opportunity that was and continues to be. And so showing on the slide is the combination of our logo and brand identities. And so since that time, which has been now over 5 years, the operations and governance of Human Space continues to be managed out of our Toronto studio and continues to build with new teams in other BDP locations. So on the slide is a global map, and it's indicating Toronto, highlighted in orange, which is the first headquartered location. And since then, we've been expanding the practice into London, United Kingdom, into Singapore, into New York City, and into Delhi in India. And these 5 locations, continue to build in operations, governance, and practice. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the challenges that we've had growing a global group. It's only been 5 years, and we've learned a lot along the way. So I'm going to go through this list bullet by bullet point. So the first is awareness building. So one of the challenges has been building awareness of Human Space within local markets and within the organization itself. Bridging projects and becoming part of existing teams in different markets and different ways of conducting business has been an area that we've been really focusing on quite a bit. And to become familiar with those local markets and nuances. The second is activating allyship. So finding those within the organization that are interested in inclusive design and can act as allies in their local markets and be inclusive design ambassadors within BDP to elevate all projects within the practice. Training to support new projects in new markets and with new clients. So one of the challenges there has been to elevate the quality of those that are working within Human Space and the work and the guidance that they're providing on projects and to clients. And as part of that, it's understanding the baseline policies, the codes, and the standards, again, that are different in each part of the world. And lastly, varying levels of advancement, as each country and each city and each organization that we deal with, and that many of us know that are part of this this seminar today, are at different stages of advancement. And especially when we look at that around the world, there are many different issues to be addressed in human-centered and inclusive thinking. And we need to work at adjusting those conversations to local contexts. So that's been quite a unique challenge and opportunity, originating from a Toronto-focused practice, and in 5 years, quickly growing and expanding globally and dealing with different contexts. So how have we worked to address across the organization some of these considerations? Well, the first is the creation of BDP belonging. So on the slide is a illustration of the logo BDP belonging, as well as illustrations that show diversity of individuals and their lived experiences. And so BDP belonging is a network across BDP that represents all areas of diversity, and that can lead to that we can lead to cultural change together. So BDP belonging is our equality, diversity, and inclusion steering group, with representation at all levels from our UK studios, Dublin, Toronto studio, New York studio, as well as our studios in the Middle East and Asia. And they're supported by an ever-growing network of allies. So BDP belonging provides the practice within a range of different voices and life experiences to support and guide on all aspects of diversity and inclusion in the profession, as well as in project work. So inclusive design, which is a fundamental part of my involvement in BDP belonging, is one of the priority areas for the network. And that helps to further the potential of addressing inclusion and equity in our project work globally. And so some of the things that we have done within the organization, and I'm just going to go through some of them on the slide. And there's a variety of images here. And the first is a series of think tanks that we offer and have offered within BDP to further the discourse around topics of neurodiversity, social mobility, race, color, and culture, and how the built environment can impact those experiences. Offering training, in particular in the UK, working with the UK teams on the inclusive design overlay process, which is now part of the REBA plan of work, and workshops and engagement sessions. So being part of internal teams and working together with teams on engagement and inclusive design conversations and focus with different user groups as well as interested parties, and community outreach, being involved in the community and contribute and giving back to the community. So on the slide is an image of our Toronto studios involvement with Stopgap, which is an organization that focuses on temporary ramps and addressing storefronts around the city of Toronto that are inaccessible. We also at Human Space have worked internally and have begun to share this externally as well, is a resource guide on inclusive visualizations. And this is to help all of our colleagues within the organization to critically examine how we can tell more inclusive stories in our projects. Toolboxes are available, and training for staff is across the organization in their project work through these resources that are available. So I'm now going to move into case studies and show examples of our work from theory to practice. I'm going to showcase a variety of inclusive design and consulting projects from a variety of sectors, from different scales and types of work and locations around the globe. And I'm going to start first with projects that are based in Toronto and expand out to some of our work in the UK, the US, and Singapore. And each project had its own challenges and opportunities to improve access, well-being, and inclusion in the built environment. And so I will get into these now. So one of our early projects in Toronto was in the commercial sector named 100 Broadview. And on the slide, we are showing how accessible design can renew an underperforming property and its value through a striking new lobby entrance with orange-colored ramps. And prior to our intervention, 100 Broadview was an unremarkable, somewhat drab commercial building in Toronto's East End. Similar to many of the older buildings in the city, this property had suffered from a lack of identity and access to the ground floor. And at that time, accessing the ground floor required 7 steps up to access the main floor, and there was no access to the lower unoccupied level of the building. And additionally, a minuscule lobby made the building inaccessible to people using mobility devices or walking aids from street level. And so the design team, we leveraged an accessible design solution to establish an urban connection and an inclusive entrance with a bold new identity for the building. So on the slide here is a sketch, an early sketch illustrating the solution to the lobby at 100 Broadview. And so what the solution was here was to cut away the first floor slab, opening the former basement as a lower ground commercial level, and a brightly colored extensive ramping system, which was actually inspired by a skateboard park concept at the time, and reimagining the structure to bridge entry from street level to the basement and to the ground floor, and giving what was once an anonymous property an engaging retrofit and a new, strong building identity. And so our client, the building owner, had to give up leasable space in order to transform the entryway into a striking statement at grade, with a series of ramps and demarcation, and to demarcate the property as a creative hub that can now be open to strollers, bicycles, and mobility devices. And the solution here not only allows for improved entry and mobility access throughout the building, but did present to our client and to the industry a strong business case of including accessibility in design, which could actually increase base rents for tenants and also could retain quality tenants by increasing footfall traffic into the building. And additionally, colorful and custom designed wayfinding elements were carried throughout the building's hallways and shared areas to provide for clear navigation and branding. This helped to also create a clean look and distinctive brand for the building with an introduction of large super graphics. And viewed from the street, new clean signage and a large and expressive window into the main lobby gives a glimpse into the dynamic and expressive form of the ramp system inside. So this project has won a number of awards, including an award from the Institute, the IAUD in Japan. So I'm going to move on now to another project in the Ontario market, which is in the housing sector. And this project is named Access Condos and is a game-changing project that has set new standards for accessible housing. So our client, Liberty Hamlets, has a background in working with young adults with disabilities and has envisioned a vibrant new community that integrates design strategies for people living with cognitive and physical disabilities, young families, and those aging in place. And so on the slide, is a exterior view of the development. So the project consists of 2 towers, 22 and 24 stories tall. And the development addresses the growing demand for accessible housing in the Southern Ontario region, which has a wait list of over 20,000 people. The site towers are shifted intentionally on the property so that they get plenty of access to sun and daylight from the southeast, and as the sun moves westward throughout the day. And the tower materials are also durable to resist wind and rain from vehicular travel, and features also a protected courtyard and outdoor community area within the development for residents and visitors. And so our client wanted to create a building that would serve multi-generational living, opportunities to age or live in place, and offer independent living for people with disabilities. The building has currently been designed to provide 100% barrier-free suites. And early on in the design process, Human Space facilitated an inclusive design co-session with the team, with the community and the client group. And so some of the feedback we expected, and other feedback that we heard was quite concerning and put into perspective how we need to do better in our design work. The comment, "I adapt by not using my space," was a sentiment shared by a person who was part of the co-design session using a manual wheelchair. And that resonated with so many people in the room who often are unable to use the space that is available to them. And so this co-design session provided the framework and in many ways the design parameters moving forward for the project. And so on the slide is just an image of the co-design session marketing and the quote, "I adapt by not using this space." And so within the housing portion of the tower is just a typical ground floor plan. The team had consciously made some design decisions to enhance the usability, safety, and accessibility of each floor. And so this included the corridor to accommodate larger mobility devices, implementing an area of refuge on each floor, which is just what it sounds like. It's a safe place for people with or without disabilities to go in during an event of emergency, where a firefighter can come up and easily find them and escort them to safety down below. And garbage chutes that could be accessed directly from the corridor without having to struggle with another self-closing door. And looking at the suite types, on the screen, I'm showing a typical 1-bedroom at 510 square feet and a 1-bedroom barrier-free suite at 600 square feet. So just to reiterate, within this project, 100% of the suites meet the barrier-free code requirements, and 15 to 20% of the suites are being designed as Access Plus suites. So through co-design sessions, we established a higher standard for accessible living within these Access Plus suites. So we've incorporated into these suites larger turning circles, roll-in showers, washrooms with dedicated clearance spaces, side-by-side washer and dryers, proper clearances around beds, and options for accessible kitchens. And just showing an interior view of the suites, the Access Plus suites, these have been inspired by Scandinavian design with clean lines and a warm woodsy aesthetic, and they're meant to feel comfortable and inviting. Suite sizes range from 1 to 3 bedrooms to suit a mix of singles, couples, and families. And the intention of the client is to market to buyers who may not have a disability as well, but are thinking ahead for their own housing needs and retirement needs, buying a place as well, potentially where elderly parents can visit, or are simply interested in just having a larger unit size. And the cafe at grade as well, which is a partnership with the Enhanced Day program in Durham to employ participants who have cognitive disabilities to learn important social and job skills on site. And at grade, it was important for this new development to also act as a community hub with transparency, connected sight lines, high contrast, and activation of the space. So on the exterior, there's a sensory garden, which is envisioned to incorporate service animal relief areas for residents and visitors. And Access Condos is really about integration of accessibility into the housing project from the start. It's about being deliberate on space parameters and interior design features. And that was a conscious and deliberate decision that we and the client made upfront in the early stages of the co-design processes. And what we learned through this is that you can do something beautiful while integrating accessibility into design and to raise the bar for accessibility in housing developments. While strategic decisions were made around mobility needs, there's also been an integration into the project of environments for people with low or no vision, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, or needing to support in neurodiversity in the design. So these are all different aspects that have also been included in the interior design decisions. So I'm going to move on to another project, which is a collaboration of Human Space with Alphabet City's Sidewalk Labs, a Google-based company. Many of you on the call may be familiar with Sidewalk Labs, and the goal here was to improve urban infrastructure through technological solutions in the built environment and testing what is possible when integrating new accessible innovations. So on the slide is an aerial perspective of the plan for Sidewalk Toronto, which was to provide an inclusive gateway into Toronto's eastern waterfront and to connect the city fabric together. And our work included urban design research, design consulting, project reviews, and involvement in co-design sessions. And our engagement in the co-design sessions were to brainstorm and workshop ideas for accessible systems within the broader community to inform guideline principles and planning work. And so here on the slide is an example of one of the workshops where we worked with participants to review the accessibility parameters for fabrication of the hexagonal street pavers, which are shown as a mock-up on the slide. And so one of the key goals for the project was to put people first over anything else in the public realm, with an opportunity to create a community of the future that is both inclusive and integrated with smart city technology. And so some of these features included the resin-bound hexagonal pavers that can be replaced or repaired quickly, and embedding capabilities like heating to melt snow and ice, and permeability of ground surfaces for proper drainage and safety. And in addition, the integration and use of audible, visual, and tactile sidewalk posts were proposed to connect pedestrians with their personal devices for wayfinding. Walkways would also form a social function in the scheme. So here's just a section cut view of the street where the concept was to create an urban lounge and landscape green zones with the integration of movable street furniture. The sidewalks would give priority to pedestrian routes instead of those for cars. And there would be no curbs. Detectable edges would be available between pedestrian zones, and travel lanes would be formed by the use of different paving materials and tactile features. And in a nighttime scenario, the hexagonal pavers would also incorporate LED lighting features to illuminate so streets can signal new uses. And so on the screen is just a view of of what it might be in the evening. And as mentioned earlier, dynamic curves would also be introduced and flexible and adaptable for pickup and drop-off zones. And here on the slide are ideas within the project for retractable facades and outdoor comfort systems. such as raincoats for sheltering sidewalks. And those were explored in the project in real time through mock-ups. So while this project is not sadly moving ahead, and that was largely due to financial constraints, the project does serve as an experimental testing ground with the ultimate goal of improving people's lives, and many lessons learned from this project that we can apply to work in the future. So I'm going to now start moving a little bit more broadly in outside of the Toronto and Ontario context into more global issues and global based work. So we're just going to turn to the hospitality sector and talk a bit about redefining accessible travel. And so on the slide is an image of one of our concepts for reimagining barrier-free suite in a hotel. So barrier-free hotel suites, they've traditionally been designed with that institutional healthcare look and with a certain lack of appeal. Knowing the demand of an aging demographic, hotel operators are considering options for creating hotel suites that are more appealing for accessible travel and for the aging population. And so here on the slide is also an image of a conventional accessible washroom that is seen in many current barrier-free hotel suites. So what we've envisioned is a dramatic change from the conventional barrier-free suite, where accessible elements are seamlessly integrated, that they are easily missed. So given the opportunity to work with a confidential client to reimagine this, we were able to incorporate generous clearances, multifunctional details, and audible and visual elements, along with luxurious finishes that elevate the guest experience. So some of these features include the flexible open closet to the left of the image, centered left, which is to support with easy reach to lowered racks, and also a lower drawer that can roll out and double as a stool. The closet is part of a continuous wall unit that flows into a height adjustable counter and a desk, making it more multifunctional. And audio-visual elements that include a doorbell and emergency alert system operated through the Cove lighting system. And by fitting out the bathroom with a sliding pocket door rather than a swing door, we're able to maximize the floor area to offer necessary turning space for mobility devices. And within the bathroom space, from the black shower tiles to the brass fixtures to the pink floral wall, all of those details were carefully considered to give hotel guests a luxurious experience reminiscent of a spa. And each of the robe hooks are individually lit in addition to being fixed at different heights. And the roll-in shower features a large wooden bench, toiletries being printed in tactile and braille, and grab bars that are elegantly mixed with textured wood and brass detailing. And so the layout of the space feels comfortable and flexible, looking in plan view on the slide. And with this layout, incorporating the appropriate front and side approaches, turning spaces, and latch side clearances. So perhaps the best part of this design is that it does not fall into common tropes of looking institutional or sanitized. Instead, it's about simply creating a gorgeous and spacious hotel room with thoughtful design details and luxurious accommodations for any guest. And so we continue to promote this work and hope to collaborate further with hotel operators. Okay, so we're now going to travel to the sunny island of Singapore in Southeast Asia. Human Space has been part of a successful multidisciplinary team that has been tasked with the first phase of redesigning the public realm of Singapore's Geylang Serai cultural belt. To reconnect the cultural heritage of the food and shopping district to the future aspirations of the community. So this project is one of our urbanism projects, and working together with the Singapore studio. So Geylang Serai, just to provide some context to the project, is one of the oldest Malay settlements in Singapore. While still preserving its unique cultural identity, it's now a vibrant food and shopping district and neighborhood that reflects Singapore's diverse, multiracial and multi-religious fabric. There are also many elderly residents in the area and young families. And so the initial challenge of the project was how to best activate the public spaces to support local businesses, recognizing the rich Malay heritage of the district and transforming the district into a progressive modern community neighborhood. The whole area was originally quite open with no rest spaces, no gathering areas, and accessibility and wayfinding were also key issues that needed to be resolved, as there was quite difficult navigation and grade changes around the site. So this project involved close consultation and engagement with interested parties, identifying the district's key issues, the current urban narrative, the heritage of the place, and the community's future aspirations. And so when we began to initially design the project, it was important to understand the local Malay cultural heritage and the social fabric of Singapore's popular Geylang Serai district. And this was pivotal for the project team in working with the community to reestablish the vision for its regeneration. And so the interventions in the project, which are shown on several renderings on the following slides, include sheltered areas, protected bike lanes, accessible play spaces, and green spaces. And a key inspiration for the project was the integration of a motif on the shading structures around the site that were inspired by traditional Malay tapestry. And the design team aimed to create a new market where multiple cultures and generations can thrive together. So some of the inclusive design strategies include landmarking at key gateways to the area to clarify and reinforce a sense of arrival, and by bookending the gateways to the cultural belt. And the main iconic archway shown on the slide is inspired by traditional architectural forms of the Malay kampung houses, with tropically suited roofs and harmonious proportions, which continue to have great cultural value in the region, as almost all Malay houses in Singapore no longer exist due to urban transformation. So this was a very important cultural icon to be introduced into the site. The Geylang Serai Public Realm project recently opened on the 7th of November, so just a little over a week ago now, with a community celebration. And the Prime Minister, Lawrence Wong, who was the guest of honor at the launch, was very proud that the project was complete and reflected a well-integrated community that was both reflecting Singapore's Malay heritage, multiracial and multi-religious society. And as part of the project at the Ju Chiat Complex shopping mall, exterior improvements were made to include upgraded pickup and drop-off points, recirculating vehicular traffic away from pedestrian corridors, and providing rest areas and play areas across the entire public realm. And resolving accessible routes and differences of grade around the site to key entry points, and also injecting sheltered rest areas throughout the site to enhance weather protection and safety during the evening and the nighttime hours. There was also an introduction through plants and landscaping strategies to make the streetscapes more vibrant, welcoming, pleasant, and improve intuitive wayfinding through olfactory features. And so I hope that some of these projects are bringing to light, the multi-sector, multifaceted and scale approach to human space and the work that we do. I do have two more case studies that I'd like to share, and then we'll be wrapping up shortly to move into conversation. So I'm going to shift gears and move into Liverpool in the UK, where the project team has been collaborating with our BDP pattern practice, which is a recently acquired group within BDP focusing on sports and recreation venues. And so here on the screen is a project, Everton Stadium, which is now under construction and near to complete, where the team prioritized accessibility and comfort to advance a more inclusive fan experience. So our client, Everton Football Club, set out to create the most inclusive stadium in the Football League. And the key challenges here were the tensions of heritage and accessibility, as well as providing necessary space provisions for spectators with a wide range of disabilities in a very compact stadium built on a very tight site. So the site is an existing UNESCO World Heritage Site that was once a dock built in the 19th century for sifting coal, with a gritty and industrial character to the site. A primary challenge for the project was to maintain the public realm's heritage while introducing a completely new use. The initial preservation requirements were to hold onto the materials of the site by reusing the existing pavings, granite cobbles, and integrating rail lines. So it was key to balance the tensions here of accessibility objectives with heritage preservation needs, as it would become difficult for many spectators or visitors to move around the site while using a mobility device or pushing a child in a stroller, or just movement and concerns of falls and safety. So through extensive discussions and workshops with local authorities and disability groups, new granite was introduced on the site and the surfaces were flattened, with certain ground areas marked, protected, and celebrated, establishing safer, clear routes into the stadium. Tactile pavings and a variety of rest spaces were also provided for all people and fitness levels, and tree plantings are strategically placed on the site to slow down wind effect on the site. And here on the slide is a view of the East Fan Plaza, which uses different types of paving to delineate zones. And important to mention that the rail lines that you see on the image were lifted, repaired, replaced, and made level to give honor to the heritage attributes of the former use of the site, but also to manage, manage accessibility and safety. And so the flattened rail lines were also integrated into the design of the site to provide directional routes and cues of navigation to different areas around, and zones around the site. And so here's an image of the site currently under construction. From a wayfinding perspective, the exterior entrances to the stadium establish a hierarchy. So the big black portal on the facade highlights the main retail location. And what is not fully evident in this image, but if you look close enough, you will see a smaller series of portals along the exterior, which represent different entrances with clearly marked fan zone numbers into the stadium. What is very important here that I wanted to mention is that no design decision from a wayfinding strategy will be required for navigation on the stadium's interior, as the key decision-making points all happen on this stadium's exterior, leading fans directly to their zones within the stadium. And looking at the perspective on the slide of the seating bowl, Everton Stadium will have the highest number of accessible spaces of any stadium in the Premier League, and accessible seating is sized to accommodate scooters over wheelchairs and space for companions at all ticket levels, with uninterrupted views to the field of play, so clear guards and sight lines over someone that is standing in front of them. And on another image of the seating bowl, amenity seats have also been provided within the stadium to accommodate for accessing seating with fewer steps, increasing leg room and more elbow room, giving spectators and guests a wide range of options. So there was extensive consultation that was done through the project to validate what was acceptable, with the tension of squeezing a stadium of this size into a very compact, tight site. And lastly on the slide is a view of the interior of the stadium under construction. So just wanted to mention some of the other inclusive design features of the stadium that are not seen in the image, but I had to mention, which will include gender-neutral washrooms on all levels, accessible changing places, and a sensory box designed to accommodate individuals and fans with sensory sensitivities to offer a calm and comfortable environment away from noise, lights, and crowd stimulation. Okay, and the last, I believe the last project case study that I have in my presentation today is now heading over to New York City. So back to North America, but this time in the United States. So heading to New York City, our team recently completed a study which seeks to improve social value and equity using the concept of meanwhile or temporary uses of existing and new buildings as a catalyst for creating more connected, healthier communities. So the project is based in the neighborhood of East New York and proposes leveraging meanwhile uses to enable the development industry to better understand existing local community needs and to inform the design of future permanent developments within existing communities that are going through change. So the project team leveraged large sets of public data and engaged with the local community to understand needs and priorities in the community of East New York. And what we learned through this study is that the needs included major zoning changes and development that is underway, which was impacting local job loss, lack of community engagement to inform larger developments and the benefits to the local community, a lack of access to healthy food, a high percentage of adults that are suffering from diabetes, and 1/3 of the population being obese, and parks being a critical asset to the community that must be maintained. So our approach to investigating the community was a combination of open source data from New York databases and environmental agencies to look at noise and air pollution, but in addition was meeting with a series of local community organizations. And the resulting opportunities for the particular site for a meanwhile use strategy based on the needs that we learned and adjacent to the future interborough express line that runs through Queens and Brooklyn includes opportunities for preventative healthcare which is a visualization on the slide. Hubs for social interaction and environmental comfort during hot summer days, which is another visualization on the slide. And supporting the connection between local gardeners and farmers markets with grocery stores for access to healthy food. And the hope is that this work will set the foundations for mutually beneficial developments in the long term that can contribute to successful business and healthy, equitable communities. So this study, while based in East New York, was a fresh lens on the issues that were facing East New Yorkers, but the proposed process and the thinking behind this can be applied across global city regions, looking at how equity and well-being of existing communities can be successfully brought into future developments that happen within communities that are going through rapid change. So I wanted to tie this to some of our examples of recently completed meanwhile uses that we have completed on inactive sites that have been earmarked for future development. So here is a client group named Box Park, a project based in East Croydon, in Southeast London, next to East Croydon Station. And this project is named Box Park Croydon. So this is just an exterior view of the project. And so this meanwhile use strategy was to create a welcoming pop-up food and entertainment complex to bring in a diversity of users crossing a variety of generations and communities. And so in this vicinity, a local community, but also a large influx of individuals coming into the community to work. And so this project, this meanwhile use was constructed of upcycled shipping containers that includes 96 low-cost flexible units arranged around a covered courtyard space. And it's become the focal point of the community for people to come together and enjoy an ever-changing variety of food and event program. And this project is a second project in a series of Box Park projects. And it's been specifically designed to promote independent traders, local businesses, and to also be a catalyst within the local community to thrive. So over 330 independent businesses have been supported, 800 jobs created, and 169 million pounds of gross value added to the local economy in new jobs and business investment. And just to wrap up, a few highlights of other global work, looking at urban nature as a driver for social inclusion and well-being, working on a study of applying human-centered design to high-rise living units, and our recently completed Heritage for All project in Canada, which aims to eliminate barriers to Canada's federally owned heritage buildings while preserving historical integrity. So similar to that Everton Stadium project with the historical preservation and accessibility tensions. So much of our work and what we're finding in a global sense is that the work that we're doing in one location and the work that we're doing in another, we're learning and applying so much of our lessons learned to the two different projects. And it's really creating a global view on issues around inclusion and equity in the built environment. And so just so you're aware, for anyone who is on today's webinar, we continue to raise the bar on sharing our research and our projects through education externally around the globe. Just recently, we did complete a webinar and are sharing the guideline for crafting spaces for everyone, which is about telling inclusive stories through inclusive visualizations. So feel free to visit our website to see that recording and to download the free resource. And I'll just end here with a call to action. How do we design a human-centered future? How can you contribute to this if you're in the design community, if you're an owner of a property, if you're working in the policy side or in public sector? We can all make different contributions to creating a more human-centered future. When we consider the needs of the greatest extent of all people, we at Human Space are continuing to get better in our work. We're continuing to design more flexible solutions and working towards benefiting a broader population. So with that, I'll say thank you and happy to move into conversation.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Clear.
Okay. So really thrilled with the presentation and very grateful for your time and sharing your expertise and your experience. One of the things that is difficult for America not to take note of is that our colleagues in England have moved much more thoroughly to embrace inclusive design. And I think it's important to just note that you have benefited from an English commitment around inclusive design. And I think we're seeing more and more firms that are British-based really embracing these ideas. And it has been a tougher slog in the US. And for those of you that may not know, this is not new. This has been around for a while. We worked very closely with the Commission on Architecture and the Built Environment, which was a public agency, but very brief lifespan in doing their work that married a commitment to inclusive design and to environmental sustainability, based in London, but all across the UK, or all across England. I'm not sure how many people are aware of some of the extraordinary work by the Royal National Institute of Architects. I mean, British architects. RIBA has a commitment around this that is an outstanding example for every architectural institution in the world to take leadership on this. And they've been unstinting in it. And I think I would confess to a level of envy that we have struggled to get Americans to embrace an equal commitment around inclusive design. And just any reflections on that. And people may not be aware that things like the 2012 Olympics set a bar that has not been exceeded on the Olympics and inclusive design in 2012. And they did that on a campus of 26 acres, which remains a global model of inclusive design constantly evolving. And it's become a very vibrant neighborhood, as I'm sure you know. But speak to us a little bit about what you think about this. This is very interesting. And I'm afraid too much of what we witness in the US is about just tell me what I have to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Never
no,
an inspiration.
it's such a an important point that you make. Much of our work is focused on both understanding baseline and having our clients understand baseline, but also how to move beyond baseline and push the dial forward. And a lot of it is about explaining the value behind that. And so I think, you know, in our work, and a lot of what I didn't show today is, you know, is more of the compliance-based work and baseline work that is fundamental to many of our projects, but we always work towards doing better. And so I think to your point, I think at a global scale, it is everyone's at a different pace of where they are at in the issues around equity and inclusion in the built environment. There's different views and different ways that countries are dealing with it. So as you know, in the UK, you know, the inclusive design overlay that's been introduced this year by REBA sets the bar for having an inclusive design champion on every project in the profession of architecture. And that in itself is definitely a huge leap forward. You know, I think what I say and my colleagues say is, you know, one day there shouldn't be a specialized focus on inclusive design because it should be part of the practice of architecture and design. It should be something that is innate to how we think and how we work as professionals in the industry. So I think that's what REBA, you know, is trying to do and has put out there as a baseline. And I do find when policy change happens, you know, or practice change happens, to elevate practice, it really sets a different bar and a move and a shift. And sometimes you need policy to do that. So in Canada, there is the new Canadian the Accessible Canada Act, which is under development, which our heritage project that I just had one slide on uh, is part of, and that is bringing the best research globally, the best findings in dealing with issues of accessibility and inclusion to the forefront of developing these national standards. And I think that is going to, you know, really make a change again in society in the Canadian context for pushing the dial forward. And then in the U.S., it's been a, you know, again, and as you said, Valerie, similar to your experience, it's a different conversation. It has been about ADA, what I've been experiencing. Many of the conversations we've had are around, well, we have ADA, so that's good enough. And I think again, it's having those change makers pushing the dial, pushing the discourse in their own organizations to see impactful change and moving that forward. So I think it really is about understanding the value that it can bring to individual lives, to experiences, to spending power, to market opportunities. There's such a strong value proposition to create inclusive environments that, you know, I hope to see more change come, and largely that change comes from policy, from standards and codes as a minimum to push the movement forward.
And just a note on that, Jesse, one of the things that we all know who have been pioneers in this field is that the accessibility standards represent a fabulous floor, but it is only a floor, and it is not terribly responsive to the reality of disability in the world today. And that's one of the reasons that is absolutely a motivation to move forward. I have one quick question before I leave that. You told us a little bit about your education as an architect. Given what you know now, would you change your architectural education, or would you find a way somewhere in your career to invest in architectural education in order to fire up awareness and knowledge of doing this work?
Absolutely. You know, I think with my education, it unfortunately it wasn't part of the curriculum other than at the time, you know, a focus on code. The barrier-free section of the Ontario Building Code was we had maybe one lecture in it in a course, and and so it wasn't part of the curriculum. I've been advocating within the city, within the education programs to see more of this taught in schools. And we're definitely seeing that movement. We're seeing that at the Daniels faculty in Toronto. We're seeing that at OCAD University. We are seeing inclusive design becoming more of a topic and a foundation of learning within education. And we're seeing that at the undergraduate levels. We're seeing that at the master's and PhD levels. And I'm proud to say that as part of our human space team, many of our team members are leading on that forefront of being educators within these different institutions. So it's definitely pushing us forward and raising the bar.
And I would say from our experience that young designers are hungry for the opportunity. So now I'm going to go to our audience and bring in some questions here. One of them is actually from one of our architectural designers. Could you go into detail about some of the inclusive design elements you implemented in the Children's Hospital project?
Okay, sure. That project, I think I had shown a brief slide on, which was a project in Ontario, which was the Erin Oak Kids Children's and Rehabilitation Hospital. And so some of the features in that project, and that project being done now over about 10 years ago, there was a strong focus on thinking about children on the autism spectrum and having rooms, certain aspects of the design of the healthcare facility that would be creating a sense of calm, a sense of ease for children, noise reduction. So that was through acoustic treatments, in treatment areas, in play spaces, having areas of focus in the center, areas of rest, to have children feel like they're in safe spaces. So there was a big focus on thinking about neurodiversity in the design of that project, use of color, use of materials.
Thank you for that. That is very helpful. Our colleague in Tokyo, who stayed up way too late, would like to know about toilet design in your experience with kids and LGBTQ communities, as well as people with dementia. Just, that the Japanese are way ahead of the rest of us in terms of inclusive toilet room design. But he wants to know what you have to say about it.
Yeah. So what do I have to say about inclusive toilet design? I think that we've in that space, we've been focusing on signage as a big aspect of inclusive toilet rooms, thinking about the use of all genders and how all genders can have a space to feel comfortable with non-gender designated use of toilet rooms. So in many of our projects, we are creating universal washrooms, universal change rooms that are non-gender designated, and how we are considering signage to kind of move away from the notion of male or female, and looking at other symbol sets that can address all genders. So that's kind of one thing that we've been looking at in that sense. There's also a great study that is out there. You may be familiar with mixed design. So there was a study done looking at also all gender inclusive washrooms that I would recommend you to take a look at.
Thank you. my colleague and friend, Gerald Craddock in Ireland, checking to see if BDP have carried out any cost-benefit analysis of inclusive designed dwellings or buildings. And Gerald is the director of one of the really important universal design entities in the world, and one of the only ones that is funded by the government of Ireland.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and I think it's still too soon to know the outcomes. I will say, from a sales perspective, we are working with a housing developer on a accessible design program. They're named Daniels Corporation, and we've been working with them on the accessible design program for selling units that meet mobility, meet mobility needs, lifespan housing needs, sensory or sensory needs of those that are purchasing the units. And I will say that from a sales and marketing perspective, they are selling fast. So I would recommend, happy to share that work as well, and to look into the ADP program with Daniel. So there's quite a bit of data on sales and marketing for these types of units. And I think that's what we're seeing kind of at this point in the information that we have. But I would love to do a study evaluating the more of the business case and the financials behind it.
Thank you. We have another question here from Kinsey Kacha, another guest. As you have expanded globally, how have you adapted your R&D processes, methodologies, and project team composition and experience to account for culturally and regionally specific senses, experiences, and navigations of space, place?
Okay. Wow, these are terrific questions.
I told you. We have a terrific audience.
Yes. So from an R&D point of view, some of the projects that I had shown are research based. And so we do invest in research. We invest in our own research that's self-funded, and we also work with institutions on joint projects. And so at BDP, we have an R&D group called BDP Lab, which puts out a series of calls for research across the entire organization and funds those projects. So that is across all studios, which are in all regions of the world, and we've had inclusive design based challenges that we have put out there, and have had the opportunity to self-fund some of those. And from a diversity and equity point of view, the research is open to all levels of individuals across the organization, all backgrounds. And in the inclusive design priority projects, we focus on an inclusive design process. So as well, engaging in the community, engaging internally, trying to bring as many voices to the table, and looking out for where we what we aren't seeing, or who we aren't bringing to the table, and collecting those views as well. So we work to integrate inclusive design into our own R&D processes.
Just a note on that, one of our concerns has been, as we seek to engage more people with lived experience of disability in our work who come from particularly very low income communities of color, we are finding that it requires a different level of outreach and a different kind of communication for meaningful participation. It is the easiest thing in the world to recruit privileged people, middle class or better, with a disability experience or not, but those are the people who show up and are the easiest people to grab for any kind of participatory research. And I think we're all going to have to discipline ourselves to be much more rigorous about figuring out how do we help people to feel comfortable as constructive critics a role that may not be familiar.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
here's another important question. This is a person who is anonymous but unable to find any information on efforts to recruit more individuals with disabilities as architects and designers. Can you talk to that? I want to interject here that we have a number of designers with disabilities who are on our team at IHCD. This is a critically important work of recruiting more people with disabilities. We published Building a World Fit for People, Designers with Disabilities at Work 22 years ago. And we are now working on a podcast series, which will be all about that. It is a delight to look around the world and find that there are so many more people than there were 22 years ago. But that doesn't mean that it is enough. And I know among our participants is one of those members of our team who is very invested in this. And he is a low vision architectural designer recently finishing his MArch and absolutely passionately engaged in this and deeply involved in the podcast. But if you've got something about disability and design that you can share.
Sure. Yes, we in many of our projects we create advisory group panels of experts and professionals that are part of our project teams to bring extra layers of evidence-based design, personal experience to the work. So recently we finished a project with Waterfront Toronto where we created a new inclusive design guideline and brought to that a group of 15 experts, professionals with lived experience from across disability and diversity perspective to the conversation, and all were paid positions to be part of that work. So it was a very exciting opportunity to engage and bring the lived experience in to the work. As well in bringing individuals with disabilities or minority groups into practice. For us, it's also been about reaching out and having good relationships with non-for-profit organizations, community groups, social enterprise groups, grassroots organizations, disability-led or minority-owned businesses, making sure that we're also advocating and bringing on board these collaborators.
If I might just call out one of the leading lights of inclusive design in London for over 40 years was David Bonnet.
Yes.
Dr. David Bonnet is an architect and also has a PhD in architecture. And David had polio as a baby. He has lived all his life as a person with a significant disability, and he has been a powerhouse inspiring change in London and all of England, and certainly has been an inspiration to us. So I think it's important that this goes back a long way, that becoming a designer for a person with a disability adds tremendously to what we need to move forward. A couple of others, if you can take it. Because we've got so many people who have jumped in here. Heather Fuller is asking advice for someone who is trying to break into the field as an inclusive designer. I am a licensed landscape architect. Hooray. But I was previously an interior designer, double trained,
Wow.
and I have experience with doing accessibility audits. But as we mentioned in the US, this skill set is less than desired. It's getting much more desirable. I think you should be optimistic, Heather. I think there is going to be an increasingly significant demand for your expertise. But I think cross-trained people are extremely valuable. Any thoughts on that?
And the question is how to get.
Where might this skill set be an advantage, and perhaps where might she look for opportunity? It's tough to work alone.
It is. Yes. I mean, I think it's. Thank you. I think a big part of it is aligning yourself with the goals or mission of a company, or an organization that you feel there's alignment with your values and purpose, with their values and purpose. I can't say that enough. How important that has been for me in my career, so that you feel enabled to do what you are set out to do, and you feel supported. So I would say it's really about alignment of values and purpose.
Thank you. I have a compliment from one of the members of the family, you might say, of IHCD, our beloved colleague, Joan Zeisel, Dr. Joan Zeisel, certainly one of the people who has done extraordinary work building up from neurodiversity. His particular focus has been on dementia. But he is offering a compliment, a comment and a compliment. He notes Ron Mace, one of the grandfathers of the movement, who was an architect with a disability, who had polio as a child and died in 1998. But he was definitely one of the grandfathers or godfathers of the movement, as he preferred, would be both amazed and pleased by the scale of your efforts. So a gift.
Great, thank you.
From John
That's very
Zeisel.
kind, very kind.
And I just want to thank you for also bringing Susan Ruptash into the presentation, because
Yes.
Susan was a pioneer also, and
Sure was. Yes.
was pushing hard when it was often lonely. So I'm very glad that we got a chance to see her photo in your presentation. Jesse, it has been our privilege and pleasure to host you today. And for all of you who want to get a second bite at Jesse's presentation, we will get that up on our website as quickly as possible. Now, Jesse, we are in your debt. Wish you well. Look forward to an ongoing conversation and collaboration.
Great, and thank you so much. Thank you, Valerie, and thank you, IHCD, and everybody that has joined today. And please connect with me. Happy to continue the conversation.
Thank you. Be well.
Take care.